Let's review with Lieutenant Colonel James Carafano. He's Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy for the Heritage Foundation. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Good to be with you.
Good to see you as well. We know China has teamed with Iran and Russia here. Talk to me about these so-called peace talks and what concerns you might have.
Well, China and the Taliban potentially have a very complicated and interesting relationship. There's a lot of reasons why China would want to be friends with the Taliban, even though it is a terrorist group and which commits incredible human rights abuses and has actually been attacking the civilians of Afghanistan, even as the United States withdraws. One is China has a significant Uyghur Muslim population. Their nightmare scenario is that population would link up with other groups and become radicalized. And so ensuring that the Taliban and the Uyghurs don't develop a partnership, that's high on China's to-do list. Afghanistan is a country that's actually quite rich in a lot of mineral resources, and China would like to lock that up cheaply. They don't care about labor practices or property rights or anything else. But if the Taliban will make a deal with them to safely allow China to mine Afghanistan and exploit those resources, they'd be thrilled on that. And finally, China has to worry about India. They have one of the world's longest borders between them. And if the Taliban can be used as a tool for pressuring India and also for kind of keeping Pakistan in line, because you have Taliban that span the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and China being able to manipulate or influence the Taliban also increases their control over Pakistan. So there's lots of reasons why they'd like the Taliban to be their friends. And of course, for China, friends mean we don't care about human rights. We don't care about the people. We don't care about anything except the naked use of power. And if you're willing to do our bidding, we're willing to give you some money.
Wow. All right. Let's talk about broader concerns from this troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. It's actually popular with many in both parties here, this idea. President Trump actually striking a deal in Afghanistan to make this happen originally. Of course, we're seeing this play out during the Biden administration. But what are some of the maybe unintended consequences of this policy, again, bringing these American troops back home?
Yeah. Well, we ought to clearly make the distinction between what President Trump had planned and what President Biden had planned. You know, the U.S. was going to be down to about 2,500 forces. As far as the previous administration was concerned, that was a decent end state. U.S. forces were not in combat, and they were a clear deterrent to the expansion of Taliban's power. And most importantly, they really gave us an over-horizon capability with a presence in theater to really see what's going on and deal with issues that might concern us. They handed that off to the Biden administration, and they said, look, we put you in a very good place here. You can do nothing and sustain American interests in this region literally forever. I mean, we were paying less in a year for our force presence in Afghanistan that we used to pay for a week under Obama. The problem with the complete withdrawal is twofold. One, as we've already seen, is the deterrent to Taliban's behavior is completely gone. There's nothing to deter their behavior whatsoever, and we see the results of that. And that's bad for the people of Afghanistan. It's also bad for the other countries in the region, including India. And we want a strong India that's focused because they're part of the deterrent against China. The other problem is we have completely lost our eyes on a big chunk of the world. And problems that might come out of there, like the next 9/11, we can't see them, we can't deal with them. And so now we are scrambling to find alternative bases in the region to do exactly the same thing. So Biden hasn't solved any of America's problems. We still worry about terrorist sanctuaries. We still worry about regional destabilization. We still worried about mass human rights abuses and mass population movements. Biden has done nothing to address those problems. Actually, all he's done is make it harder for the U.S. to be an influence in protecting our interests in the region.
You mentioned areas in the region as well and a U.S. presence. Well, the U.S. is also working out details on a troop withdrawal from Iraq. Do you believe that is the right move?
Well, I believe that's mostly a fiction. The Iraqi government doesn't want the U.S. to leave because they see it as a counterbalance to Iran. But they don't want to give the Iranians something to attack the government over. So essentially what they want the U.S. to do is to say there are no combat troops in Iraq. And they don't really care if the U.S. troops stay They just want them to not be called combat troops, so then they can then turn to the Iraqi people and say, oh, no, there are no combat troops in here. So again, why are we here? Because of democratic policies. We were in a very good situation at the end of the Obama administration. When Obama came into office, we could have stayed there forever. The country could have been at peace. It could have been incredibly pro-American. Obama insisted on withdrawing, completely destabilized the country, opened up the door for Iran. You saw ISIS explode. And then we spent a decade finding harder ways to do simpler things. And if the United States actually left Iraq, all we would find is it would be much harder ways to do the simpler things that we're actually protecting our interests at much lower cost and really at almost zero risk to American soldiers.
All right, let's take a look forward, right? If we see terror groups like the Taliban and ISIS retake control now that the U.S. presence is no longer there, do you foresee a scenario where American troops would have to go back to these countries?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, even Democratic presidents recognize they have to protect America's interests. Obama tried to run away from the Middle East as fast as he could. But when ISIS was flooding the region and we had tens of thousands of foreign fighters flooding in there and destabilizing the region, even he had to deal with it. So even Bill Clinton, did missile strikes against al-Qaeda. So they can't ignore these problems because they come right to America's doorsteps. So the problem is they just make it harder for themselves. It's like the kid that hides under the bed and thinks that will make the monsters go away. Well, if they're real monsters, they could look under the bed, you dude. So, being forward present and protecting our American interests and demonstrating the willingness to do that actually is much cheaper, much less risky, and sees much less wars. Reagan proved that. Donald Trump proved that. All that Obama and Biden and presidents like Jimmy Carter have proved the opposite, is when you walk away from bad people, they smack you in the back of the head.
Thanks for watching the Heritage Foundation's YouTube channel. With more than 500,000 members, we are the nation's largest conservative research and education institution. We believe the principles and ideas of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing. Please help us further our mission by subscribing to this channel and sharing our videos with your family and friends.